All right, the one that could decide a whole lot of stuff. The ACC Championship game. Louisville now only a 2.5-point dog. I am curious if the loss to Kentucky helps them in this spot. They have nothing really to lose other than, I mean, the playoff aspect of this is out of the window. But that's a really disappointing loss to Kentucky. Florida State, obviously, they did what they had to do. I thought Florida gave them a lot last week, a lot of self-inflicted mistakes. Florida had that game, potentially won. So I'm curious what you make of the matchup here. And from a mental standpoint, from an X's and O's standpoint, we know that Jeff Brohm wants to run the football with Jawar Jordan, and they're going to try to pound the rock. Florida State still did not look like a playoff team last week, excuse me. Vegas says this is a real tight one, and we're going to all wait for this game to decide what actually could happen on Sunday in the playoff rankings.
So do you think this is a tougher matchup for Florida State than the game at Florida was last week?
Defensively, yes, absolutely. Maybe not quarter. Well, had Graham Mertz been playing, I would have said the quarterback was better.
But figure that one out in the preseason.
Yeah, exactly. But I think Louisville is a more complete football team than Florida. They're better on defense, better running game. I think it's absolutely a tougher matchup. The road game in the swamp and the rivalry makes it different, so it's hard to compare.
Yeah, I think that's obviously Louisville is just a better team this year, but the rivalry angle being in the swamp, I think I think if you put it all aside, I think this is a tougher game, I think, for Florida State. And I think some of it's matchup based. When we talk about Jeff Brohm and this season, there's no doubt about it. Like Jawar Jordan, Jamari Thrash, Isaac Girindo, their offensive weapons have been outstanding, but their defense under Ron English has been too. They're number one in the ACC against the run. Can Florida State under Trey Benson? We saw in the second half of that game, he got stronger. That offensive line, Trey Benson, they're probably going to have to carry this game early on. Louisville's 19th nationally in success rate on defense. So I think it is a tougher matchup just from the ways that Louisville can hurt you on defense and on offense too, because they can run the ball. Like we mentioned, Florida State at times this year, not as strong. I think defensively against the run, I think they are a little bit vulnerable there. So between Jeff Brom's play calling and what Louisville could do maybe to slow down Florida State's run game, put Tate Rodemaker into some long yardage situations, I think this is a tougher matchup for Florida State, and that's why the spread is 2-3 points going into Saturday night.
I mean, what's interesting is if Louisville wins, I think you've got a pretty clear answer that Florida State doesn't belong in the playoff. Unfortunately, again, it's a bummer. It sucks. But if Jordan Travis is playing, I pick Jordan Travis and Florida State to win this game, and I pick him to go to the playoff, and I think they could beat anybody in the playoff. But without him, I think he's that good. I think he's that important, and I'm kind of leaning Louisville out right here because of the motivation, because of the championship, knock off the Giant. Now here, if you want to go full conspiracy theory, if there was ever a time, and you could technically you could say this about the Big 12 and Oklahoma State as well. However, I think Brett Yormark will be too petty and not try to get Texas into the playoff. But if you want to talk conspiracy, it's the ACC and the officials and the commissioner trying to get Florida State into the playoff.
Well, if that was the case, they shouldn't have called so many dumb penalties in the first half of that Florida game, including a defensive player just playing defense gets flagged for unnecessary roughness, I guess.
I'm completely kidding.
I know.
I think the idea of a commissioner calling ahead of officials and then injecting some sort of agenda into play calling, when you it's a hilarious message board conspiracy to talk about, but when you actually think about how it would actually be executed in real life, it falls apart very quickly. So I don't think that would happen. But you also have this whole revenue stream division with Florida State debate that's been taking place with the ACC. If they get into the playoff, they make more money than everybody else. There's some layers here that are interesting. And I could see Louisville knocking the ACC out of the playoff.
I think some ACC fans might say, well, Jim Phillips is probably too incompetent to come up with a conspiracy theory.
See what I'm saying?
Yeah,
exactly right.
Right. So I think, sort of the psychology of this game is also interesting to me because like you said, Louisville's got nothing to lose. If they win or lose, they're probably going to the Orange Bowl. They're not going to the playoff. Florida State's got a lot on the line. They're 60 minutes away from the college football playoff potentially. if they win. So I think Tate Rodemaker did settle in a little bit in the second half. I think he'll benefit from having another full week to start. I think like I said, the psychology favors Louisville. I think it's a tougher matchup. I think I'm gonna pick Florida State for the reason of they just find a way to win. Jared Verse and Patrick Payton were taking some souls on the Florida offensive line at the end of the game. I think those two caused some havoc in the fourth quarter. Maybe that steals this game for Florida State.
I think Louisville's defense is significantly better than Florida's defense. Yeah. And that presents a significantly tougher challenge for Tate Rodemaker. So I'm taking Louisville outright to win this one because I think playing for a ring is a big deal for Louisville players. To come to after what they've dealt with and to get the patron son home, to return home and win a championship. And we talked about this in the summer, like, watch out for Louisville, watch out for Louisville. Nobody saw 10-2 and an ACC championship, but we were telling you to watch out for Louisville. Jeff Brohm is that good, and he is going to have a plan this week for those names you just mentioned on the Florida State defensive line. So I'll take Louisville outright.